welcome everybody to the Chuck Jones Gallery in San Diego. We're down in Little Italy. I've only been in here maybe a handful of times, either carrying stuff in, doing work and whatnot. And then right after we moved in at the beginning of 2020, what happened? Kind of shut down and haven't had the opportunity to be back. Last year at this time, we were huddled down in cubby holes showing incredible things. And at least we've made the step back into being here in the gallery. So we're broadcasting live for this. I had so much fun last year, just kind of figuring out what we were going to do last December. And I asked my buddy Ben out of Chicago to join me. That I just figured, we had so much fun last year. I have invited him back. So hey Ben, come on in and join me. You're zooming in across the country, but there you are. You've got that same beautiful Grinch thing going on. What about the hat, man? Where's the hat?
So I went digging through my stuff that I packed.
And didn't work. Right. Didn't happen.
No, and then I called my dad today, and I'm like, hey, I know you're coming over here. So does Mom have a hat? Can you make sure Mom had a hat? And my dad and I share the same problem where we forget things very easily. So so I forgot to then text my mom to be like, hey, Dad's gonna forget. Can you bring a Santa hat? And
nice.
And my dad forgot to tell my mom. So, but I did remember to unpack my Grinch ugly sweater. So I at least
it should be. That's good. Well, the best I've got is some Grinch socks, which I don't know if can be seen, but that was given to me by Tom Millsap, and yeah, I wear them proudly. All of the socks that he gives me, so it's great. But
you play like water polo and stuff. Therefore, you're pretty dexterous, or like I think you should be able to lift your leg a little higher, buddy. So socks. Come on.
This is not water polo. This is yoga.
Well, whatever. No, it's all the same thing, isn't it? No. All right. Well,
can't get there.
That's okay. So I agree. Last year, I love this film, and there's so much to this. And what I did not realize is the amount of history that you have all wrapped up in this. And tonight we are if people got to watch last time, that was great. We uncovered a lot of cool things. Tonight, we're going to go into places that people have never seen, and we're going to uncover items from your archives with Chuck and Dr. Seuss and amazing production stuff that nobody's ever seen before, between notes and lyrics and the scripts. I mean, all kinds of goodies. We've got wonderful gift with purchase that we're going to unveil. We have a giveaway that we're going to unveil later. And if people have questions, we are packing in quite a bit here into 2 hours. And so if you do have questions, you can certainly pop those in. We'll try to get to as many as possible, but we'll just kind of have to see how the night is rolling, because when Craig and I did the preview interview, good sweet mercy, there is a lot of deliciousness for Grinch fans tonight. So with that, we figured we would get right into this wonderful film. And there's what I didn't realize also, Craig, when we were talking, and it was revealed in the letters and the archive stuff that you have, was not only the scale of how this got pulled off, but it was monumental, and so many things had to lead up to actually making this happen.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I wanted, because I see people all of a sudden coming in and hello, maybe there's a way that anybody, if you have that question, you can easily go into the chat and put a question in there, like Ben said. But right now, maybe we can all get together and, go into the chat and say who you are and where you're from. And then, say hello to each other, because we got about, 15, 18 seconds before, we got to get back on track. Ben's going to try to keep me on track today. So if you've got an opportunity, put something in the chat. Ben, you can roll off, because I can't see that far. I'm way over, and it's this font down there. But if you see anybody saying hello from wherever, maybe read that out. But yeah, this is going to be a super different show than last year. So look forward to sharing some things that I'd never seen before this year, as well as kind of trying to give you an insight into a few of the items and the revelations that I've had over the last month or so, digging in, trying to find things to share with you. So, Ben?
Yeah, and what we're going to do tonight too is, as we kind of understand not only why this was such a groundbreaking film, but even post, glory and all the accolades and stuff, and then what Chuck did later on in life, why what we have in the Grinch collection of art is as rare as it is, just in the amount that it is, and the story behind that. Like there's a purpose and a reason there. And so we're going to kind of unpack that a little bit as well. And then we've got some interviews with two, the Stitts, Mr. Heeter, and I swear like nobody has more Grinch stuff than they do. And why is that? Why? What is it that triggered that to collect this kind of thing, to keep that, and then for Mr. Heeter to then show that. So and there's that's what I love about this and the passion behind this film. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing what we had with Mike Stitts and with Bill Heeter, and that's coming tonight too.
So I know part of this, last year we spent a long time on history and sort of, how it all came together over time and really all the elements and people and that kind of stuff. And if you missed that, we're going to talk a little bit about that, but it's more this time about, two legends in parallel. And, Ben, I know you're a huge fan of Dr. Seuss. I'm a huge fan of Dr. Seuss as well. But there's a lot about Ted that, some people may not know. And so imagine a timeline, two timelines that are going parallel and occasionally hit and then eventually meet in the 1960s. So, Ben, I want to hear your perspective of the great Ted Geisel, Dr. Seuss.
So there's a lot, like I own Dr. Seuss. I own some of his secret art stuff. I remember when we did that exhibit out in, I think it was San Diego, and there's a lot that I already loved about Seuss and his books because I grew up with those, and obviously with The Grinch, Horton Hears a Who, that kind of thing. But to really get into his history a little bit more was quite fascinating because I'm in design and advertising and stuff as well, and Dr. Seuss was an illustrator, and he worked with some Life magazine, some very famous publications, Vanity Fair. But when he started out and got into this industry when he became Dr. Seuss, I believe, in college, and then he began his career as an illustrator and a cartoonist, and that was the Vanity Fair Life magazine kind of thing, which I love looking at those. I still love looking at those. The New Yorker, there's a lot to it that he did. You could see his style beginning to develop as he was doing this. And, then he was working on advertising campaigns, which I love the art in anything that is done, especially in advertising. There's storyboarding, there's concepts, there's all kinds of stuff, and he was doing big things like with Standard Oil and stuff like that in advertising. And as he kind of worked along, there was a stint there as we get into World War II and things kind of take a pause for him in the commercial world as he starts to work with the U.S. Army, and he's producing cartoons and stuff for them. And then we get into where him and Chuck meet, and Private Snafu, which is a whole other show to do, but that whole like connection of where those two kind of meet and their careers were moving up. I mean, Dr. Seuss had he was starting to get into books and how that was coming out in 1937. It was, which one was it? And I think I saw it on Mulberry Street, right? So he had notoriety and acclaim as he was moving up. Obviously, Chuck had all the greatest cartoons in the world, like, are coming from this guy. So as they get into the Army and they meet there for that first kind of creative, like, explosion that goes on, and then they come out, and they're doing their own thing. And then as they get into, as Seuss is, working on more books, and he's got Horton Hears a Who, and then this book called, I don't know, How Grinch Stole Christmas, I believe 1957-ish, somewhere in there. And so he just kind of keeps rising up, right? He's in La Jolla. It's a gorgeous, like, I've seen the pictures from his studio when he's looking out over the cliffs there and the water. Good, sweet. How you couldn't be creative there, I have no idea. And then, that kind of gets into the 60s where, I don't believe that Dr. Seuss really ever saw his books becoming animated films. They weren't meant for that. So how does that happen? Well, it only happens with one person. And so that person's history as his timeline comes in, and I'll let you take that because you know that quite well, sir.
I kind of do. The through this year and talking about the history of the two of them, I think going back and looking at the parallels, I had either forgotten, which is not a difficult thing to do, or I never knew that his actual first children's book being, and it found it on Mulberry Street in 1937. I always thought it was the 50s. I know, the history of them in the war and snafu, and that's a huge book in its own right. But the idea that the same year that Chuck started directing, when he started his first directorial, it was released in 1938, but he started directing that. Dr. Seuss was also really starting this part of his career. Chuck, as I said, started directing. He was at Warner Brothers for those 30 years. In the 40s and the 50s, he was honing his craft and building his team throughout that time. He goes in and they do the snafu cartoons, but they hit Dover Boys in 1942. They hit Hair Raising Hare, and Marvin Martian is invented in 45. You've got Roadrunner and Coyote being created in 1949. You've got the 50s, which a lot of people think as the golden era of Chuck and his team with Duck Rabbit Duck and Duck Amuck, and there's a lot of ducks in there. What's Opera Doc? It just goes on and on with the great films of the 1950s, and that then he goes into 1960 and the early 60s. He's won 2 Academy Awards, or at least his films have won 2 Academy Awards in 1950. They continue to get better. The team is getting better and better. And then television starts coming in. And then things get a little dicey with the theaters. What they do with the short subject animation is taken away. And so now all of a sudden the theaters are not demanding that there is a cartoon in the theaters, and so that whole genre goes away. They try to do a few things for television. There's new technology. They're going to do something. But a lot of the guys at MGM with Hanna-Barbera, others had gone off and started doing television, and in the early 60s, and left the classic short subject animation. And so Chuck left Warner Brothers in 1963, started Chuck Jones Enterprises, Chuck Jones Productions, and started to do Tom and Jerry's. And with blessing of Hanna-Barbera, went to MGM, started doing those, got hired into MGM, and now it's into like 1964, 1965. And the theatrical short is really waning because television is now taking a stronghold as far as where things get distributed. And so he's looking for books. He's looking for projects. Mike Maltese had gone off and done other things with MGM and other studios, and Mike and Ted were his great writers, and they worked as a great team. But now all of a sudden he's on his own, and he needs great story. He finds Norton Juster's book, theatrical short, 10-minute, a beautiful rendition. It really showed some artistic evolution throughout 1965. It was released in 65. He won the Academy Award in 1966, and as he's looking for all these projects, he's looking at stories. He's looking at things that he can envision. And he comes across the books, good friend, Ted Geisel, from 20 years before, and he sees a story. He sees it all happen. And so in his mind. And so that was the reason why it really all came together, and that he needed good story. But again, as we talked about, I think in more detail last time, we needed, I don't know why, but the Chuck and his team needed to, one, get the rights and the permission to do this. Now, Dr. Seuss had a horrible experience with television in the 1950s and was not necessary to go down in that hole, but he did not like the experience with television. And so, he didn't want anything to do with television. And Chuck came down and made the pitch to him and thought this would be really great. And Ted goes, look, I don't want to do that. I don't want it television. But as Chuck then, tried 3 times, made the pitch, got the yes, and then they put together the team. And so that was really and well, they had the team, but then he started to figure out all of the elements in there. So I know, Ben, you've been kind of looking at the elements of this film and what it kind of took to happen.
So yeah, and why Chuck wanted it so bad, and it was the story. And you know what I love? Like, Chuck has one of those photographic memories, which, man, I wish I had. And obviously, you go back from Wile E. Coyote and what he remembered reading at like the age of 7, and that's he brings that back for new character. Then 20 years earlier, he remembers this relationship and, whatever creativity was going on between him and Dr. Seuss. And, Dr. Seuss was winning awards with his book with his books by this time. And so I love the fact that, for one, Chuck didn't give up. It wasn't like, oh, okay, that's a no. We'll just go on to something else. No, he really wanted it. He loved the stories behind this stuff, and he believed he could make it happen. And there was a promise that he made to Dr. Seuss going in. So I love that whole pitch process and just him trying to get, Dr. Seuss's permission to do this. And then once they had it taken, it's a book that was a 12-minute read, maybe less.
Oh, if I've read it and read slowly, and it's 8. So,
8.
When you've got an 8-minute, and so, the idea of having to do this and create the book to the film wasn't direct, but it really was, as you said, it was about the elements of quality. It was the elements of, doing it right. And as you alluded to, it was not an explosion here, but it was close to it. The having to make that pitch, and talked about it last time, 26 times, and finally he got the yes to put up the money. And I always looked at it as, okay, well, maybe it was just him doing his thing and figuring it out and persevering, but I didn't quite understand all of the nuances of what had to happen to make this project come to life the way that it did. And so I found a few things, and you tell me, because you're in charge, Ben, which is kind of scary for me.
Very nervous about that. What I wanted to go through is there's a couple things in when they're making the pitch, and we'll get to like where when you get to the storyboards and they're showing it to everybody, and just the letter that comes back being like solid gold. But before that, you actually have to have something that you're pitching. And the words in this, you have from the original script.
Let me pull it. Hold on. Are you talking about the stuff that we talked about?
Can we reveal? I love it when you open boxes.
I know, it is kind of fun. So hold on just a second. Let's see.
It's very fun.
Yeah. So, okay, let's see what I got. Oh, I know what I got. Okay, there we go. The first one that I thought was really cool was this. Let me get on this side so that, maybe, and I know Scott's got backups on this in case you can't see very well. I don't know about glare and whatnot, but I had never seen this possible opening concepts here. And Ben, you can go ahead and you got a glimpse of it for the first time this morning, but what caught your eye in this whole thing?
The made up words. So I'll be the first who, you be the second who, and then we'll both be everyone. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right, I'm pointing to a tree randomly, right? Who tra, new tra, your turn.
No who tra na.
Nodding in agreement, both of us at the same time.
Oh, points to another. Qui con huba, right?
Ultra.
Poltro. Seriously?
Yeah,
what is that?
I have no idea.
mean, Fahudamus came out like nobody's word. I mean, come on, you know what it was, but seriously?
Yeah.
This was early concepts on another camera movement dissolves, and a group of cheerfully humming who's are approaching Whoville. They are carrying axes. Where did the axes go from these first ones? Come on.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But the fact that you go through and you're like, all right, look, man, we need some dialogue. Okay, well, what about dialogue? We need to have something, but it can't be, it can't be too serious. All right. Whoba Nutra, Wooba Nuba. Yeah, that's it. Let's go. Just start typing on the top.
I know, exactly. And where does that go from there? So So that was a fun little find. And another little treasure that I found here was, the collaboration between the two geniuses.
Yes.
Here is now, obviously they went back and forth on the concepts, but Dr. Seuss literally wrote down the words to "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch."
And you have that. Like
this is actually his handwriting on the yellow page
that is crazy.
that has the final lyrics. Your heart's as empty as a hole. Your brain is full of spiders. You've got garlic in your soul, Mr. Grinch. I wouldn't touch you with a 39.5-foot pole. You're a foul one, Mr. Grinch. You have termites in your smile. I mean, this is actually Ted's handwriting on these pages. Which
it's not a 40-foot pole. It's a 39.5-foot pole. Not a 39-foot pole. Not a 39 and an eighth. It's got to be 39.5 feet.
The three words that best describe you are as follows, and I quote: stink, stank, stunk.
I just want to say, as you're showing this, and this is what to me just, it blows my mind, is nobody else. I've never seen anywhere else anybody who has what you have with the Grinch. Nobody has it. So I know that when I'm if I'm picking up a piece or something like that, and where this is all coming from, like this, this is the source. It's Chuck and it's Dr. Seuss and it's these guys, and you have things that just blow my mind, and I'm like, how?
I love the history.
Yes.
I had never actually seen the original script, and the doctor, and this is the way that Boris sat in that studio, and Ben, do we have a photo of him in that studio with Chuck and Ted somewhere? You'd have to identify what the number is. I can't remember what it is since my hands are full here. So
A33, Mr. Ryder, I believe.
So
there it is.
So that's Ted, and I think there's one other one then with Boris Karloff, but it may not have made that rendition. But this is the banker and Ted, and there's a nice little maquette there that was there for inspiration during the reading, and Chuck in the sound studio. But if you come back and look at the script, that Boris actually sat there, and every who down in Whoville and that's the way I would read it. Every who down in Whoville like Christmas a lot, but the Grinch who lived just north of Whoville did not. So I didn't get the job. I guess, I'd probably not. But, the entire Grinch, this is, I've never seen it with a little, I don't know, genie with a light green Grinch in Chuck's writing down at the bottom. So,
about it, if you kind of think about it, in the renditions you've seen of like genies, right?
Right.
Yeah,
So yeah, we got that going for us. And then I just, as I'm poking through these things like the exposure sheet, most people know what an exposure sheet is, but the detail that Chuck had down to a 24th of a second, exactly what happened in this scene by Don Towsley and assistant animator Judy Drake, that here's it's the 24th of a second in each one of these scenes that is identified what's going on. So I always thought that was fun. And I came across this. There's actually two of these original. Think about how important this must have been if they had all the letterhead in MGM with the Grinch. Watch
yes.
The Grinch Stole Christmas or else. CBS, 7:00, December 18th. That's just brilliant. So, but I look at the production itself, and that there were so many variables going on, and I'd never seen this before. This is the production sheet from the film for parts of the scene, and it's got the scene numbers, it's got who does it, it's the timing under camera and things like that. It is pretty darn cool to see. And one of the things that got me, if you look at the filming date down here toward the end, we're talking as late as October. There's some November, I believe, in here. So, I mean, they've got a release date of December 18th and they're still under camera,
Right.
30 days beforehand. That's pretty nuts. That
Yeah.
means they really know what the heck they're doing. Ultimate confidence after 30 years of working together. This is a letter that I'm going to keep out that we're going to read a little later. What is that?
So you had some, this is, because we're going to get into.
Oh, here. This is the one. This is the one that I thought was cool because I knew that it was pretty, people thought, okay, this must be good, but you couldn't really get your arms around $370,000+ for a production. And so I'm actually going to read this letter. So this is Leo Burnett, to some associates in New York and Chicago and whatnot. It says, regarding How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Chuck Jones of MGM TV showed us a complete color storyboard of this half-hour special adapted from the famous bestseller by Dr. Seuss, as you know. Chuck is bringing this storyboard to New York, where he and John Burns will show to networks. We would give this show an unqualified rating of, quote unquote, superior and outstanding. In my opinion, this adds a whole new dimension to television and is without question the best thing ever seen in this line. Now, this is 9 months before it is being released, and Seuss has given his complete approval to this particular project and is so pleased with the way that Jones has developed his book so sensitively. As a result, Seuss has given Jones the rights to develop all of his books for half-hour TV specials, and the next one on the list will be Horton Hears a Who, and I like that Who is misspelled. Another bestseller. Additionally, Seuss voluntarily created a special set of lyrics for the Grinch show, which enhances the story immensely. I believe that this show is so good and will become such a perennial classic that it can run every year ad infinitum, and it has. It is so good, in my opinion, that it could even run twice in one season, before Thanksgiving and before Christmas. I realize that since the cost of this show is high, Burns is trying a network sale, but I think this show is so good that we ought to try to buy the thing exclusively for Kellogg's or possibly Campbell on a long-range basis. Judging from the job Jones did in translating Norman Juster's book, The Dot and the Line, to an Oscar-winning cartoon short, I would be willing to bet or buy the show from the storyboard, knowing this same dedication would apply to Grinch. Frankly, I can't express to you all how enthusiastic we are about this show and what it would do as a real prestige builder for our client. If there is any way that we can grab it, I think we should bend every possible effort to do so. Believe me, I am not overstating the case. Appreciate your reaction. These storyboards for Grinch were shown exclusively to Wally and me. They have not been shown to another person at any agency on network as of today. Is that a glowing review or what?
Yeah. And now here's the thing too on that, because we talked about kind of the enormity of this project, right? An average short, that they were doing for television was in the thousands.
So for a half an hour television special, you'd be anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 from what I've researched. And right. They're asking for nearly 400,000. And so, and I was going to show you, they did market research, 1,000 housewives. I mean, hello, you're going to find out. One of the cool things in here, and I'll just go straight to it, but this is recognizability for the books. And you get Cat in the Hat and Green Eggs and Ham at 34% and 14% that 1,000 housewives can recognize. Look where down at the bottom, fifth from the bottom, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which obviously is a
Horton Hears a How and How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Why not?
Obviously, real typewriters, and the asterisk means less than 0.5% of recognizability. So kind of changed after the film. This is the New York Times clipping the week before the film. the joke was that Ted said, "That's not my Grinch. That Grinch looks like you." So here's Chuck during promoting it. Now, I've seen this clipping before in the archive, and the picture for sure, but the LA Times, and there is a portion on the back that down here in the unlimited quantity, and I'll read a piece of it to you. And Scott, you can put it up there, and it's hard to read, but it says, Jones and MGM promised Dr. Seuss there'd be no limit on the quality of the animation of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which is the Dr. Seuss book being adapted for Sunday's show on CBS-TV. As a result of this premium on quality, the Grinch cartoon has become the most expensive half hour ever put on TV. Now, that didn't say animated special. It's the most expensive half an hour ever produced for television. Now I think I understand why it was said no to so many times. I mean, if someone came in, a few years ago and said, "Hey, you know what? Let's do $1 billion film," people go like, "That's ridiculous." But let's just spend $1 billion, because normally you spend 100 million. So let's do $1 billion. It's okay. So that kind of blew my mind. So anyway, that was is a little more in depth than I thought I was going to go, but I got so excited about it. And
it's such great context though into why, like, this was not an easy thing to do. This was not an easy thing to pull off. You're doing something different with someone who wasn't wanting their stuff adapted to a animated short, like, or a short film, like a half-hour special. He didn't. So you're bringing all these things together, and then as they start coming on board, and the whole time Chuck is there helming this whole thing, and him and Dr. Seuss, and they're moving this along. And to have, like, for me to read, it's the most expensive half hour of TV, period.
Ever.
Lucy and Des, whatever, and blah. No, it's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And then for you to read that confidential letter that said, "We need to figure it out, get the money, figure it out, get the money, we're going to do this." So,
and Chuck did get the money, obviously. He went out and made those presentations to make sure that it got done, because he could envision it. And obviously those around him knew that it was going to be pretty darn special. So, but that it is, as we were talking about before, the difficulty of taking a 6, 8, 10-minute book and making it into a 30-minute, half an hour television special, 25 minutes of animation. That's a difficult chore, but Chuck was up to it for sure.
Well, so what I wanted to, and we're gonna, it's Chuck's vision behind this, with Dr. Seuss, and then how he was coming out with it, because we're gonna get into what, it's all about character for Chuck and what he wants. That's prima. We're not just putting shiny things on the screen. It's all about character and has to say something. And what I wanted to, as we get into the character part of this, is to let everybody know too, there is a giveaway. We'll let you know what it is, and then we're going to randomly pick a winner. And it's pretty awesome. And then there is a gift with purchase on anything that we have in the Chuck Jones catalog at chuckjonescatalog.com, which there is no / this time. So I'm sorry. I'm not going to do the, wah-wah thing. chuckjonescatalog.com. And the Grinch, all of the Grinch pieces that we have available are the first 4 tabs on there. It's cool to go through and see. We'll explain what the gift with purchase is here in a little bit, and then I will refrain from doing my cheerleader. So as Chuck was always developing character first, he had to create the character, the Grinch, the Cindy, the Max. It was all about character. So I went searching for sketches on how you develop character. And we've seen some of them before, and there's some things around here that are pretty cool. But, I found a box of, like, how did Chuck's mind work in 1965, 1966? And, like, this is on MGM paper, and real Chuck, kind of playing around with what poses of the Grinch would look like. And so, and if there's too much glare, we can go to the images that were done, but I'll try to keep Scott, can you take that image just so we can see it a little bit on the, like, we're watching Craig, who's actually has the real thing. I mean, sweet mercy.
How cool is that?
I've always loved how Chuck did just his line weight and his loose sketching. all like I have several of Chuck's, original drawings because I it's part of my favorite stuff, and just to see the detail that he puts into these.
The rough stuff Chuck seemed to like more than anything. This next one I think is pretty cool because a little Cat in the Hat / Grinch, so obviously playing around with a little bit. And he did actually do all the storyboards for the Cat in the Hat, which was going to be the third project. So I have no idea who Dennis is, but he would just write notes on things. This I think was the drawing for the album cover. It won. It was nominated for a Grammy. The soundtrack was nominated for a Grammy off the album that was released in '67. So then it got nominated for the '67 Grammy Awards, which is kind of cool. And talking about music, Chuck loved to sketch. During the recording session for the music. I mean, Albert Haig directing and composing. That I just think these are awesome. I can just imagine Chuck sitting in the corner, just sketching along while he's listening and being inspired. So little memory. I love that.
Would be the person sitting behind Chuck, just watching him do these.
I know. Yeah. So, and this is actually I don't know why it's in this box, but it's an original production drawing. I mean, look at that is just so.
Yeah. All right.
I just love that. Anyway, so right. There it is.
There
you go.
Now
the
wait
drawing
a
to Joan.
so look, man, you usually come out with some pretty awesome stuff, and you're like, "Hey, this is cool. Check out what I found." Right? And then I'm like, please tell me I can purchase that. Is there? I'm looking at this stuff. I'm going to talk to Scott, and I'm going to be like, Scott, can you negotiate for me, please?
So there are a few things in this next section, not necessarily. I mean, and I didn't know that these were in here. So there's some beautiful cell setups that are in a couple of these boxes that are great. Production drawings are great. We used to make some reproductions of some of the model sheet things. We're going to get into some production drawings that originally we're not going to, but Scott has beaten me over the head so badly about them that they are.
As he should, by the way.
I know. So when we get in fact, I mean, we can segue into the production drawings if you want to, if you think, because now we're talking about pre-production things.
Wait.
That one?
I just right there, that drawing, when we were going through some stuff and you're like, oh yeah, here's like some of the model sheets he was working on. And I'm like, stop. I mean, come on, man.
Is that just amazing? And drawings to Joan.
Joan, yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know, but like, look at the
Beach and Bay, Beacon Bay, Beach and Bay Realty. Maybe he was moving. I don't think he was moving then.
The realtor, he was checking something out. He was like, Beacon Bay, let's sell a house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's stunning. That is absolutely stunning. So, getting into like Max, I love Max. How can you not love Max? And Cindy Lou.
Yep.
So, when he's developing those, like where, because we're going to get into the steps on how he was making the cartoons and stuff, but really you're talking about characters that weren't really, the focus really is on the Grinch, and Max isn't, he's in a little part, but you're expanding this part and you're giving him personality and this conscience, if you will, of the Grinch. So, for how he evolved those, was it, is he sitting as he's concepting the thing and it's him and Dr. Seuss saying, you know what, I think Max is going to be like this type of thing. I think this is how he would react. Like, was there a process into that little tidbits?
Well, I mean, he knew what he believed were the characters and what the characters were going to, be evolved in the story. He saw the story, obviously, because he did 500 storyboard to sell the darn thing. So he had to envision it so precisely. But he understood, what was important to Ted, the message of it. I mean, you talked about this, how beautiful it is, the messages that each of these come through, and whether it comes without boxes and bags, or whether it no matter how small you are, you're a person is a person. But he knew the characters and developed them to, fill in the storyline. Because, as you read the book, Max is there and Max is there, Max is here, but all of a sudden Max becomes much bigger. Cindy Lou evolves and this relationship evolves because it's 25 minutes of animation. And so you've got to tell a story, and the way they interact, the songs, the animation that goes with the songs, the music, and all of that has to be figured out in Chuck's head. So, and it all comes down to, the animators. At the end of the day, after the exposure sheets are used, the layout drawings that Chuck did were used, the layout for the backgrounds are done. It's about the animation. As Chuck said, an animator is an actor with a pencil. It's them acting in the film. And so it really comes down to animation. And you look through that process. It wasn't just like, well, of course it's going to be this way. They had to review it. And if it wasn't right, sometimes 1 or 2 frames would be taken out. So pencil tests would be done. And in fact, I think we have a pencil test, don't we?
Oh, we do. And, Chuck is considered, and as you and I both know, when we were at Disney Studios, and I've already told the freak out story of that, the guys that when we're in these animation studios today even, and Chuck is still known as a legend for his timing. Like things he knew how to make them make sense, which is why they came off so perfectly and why his stuff is studied still today in such detail. So we do have some I love pencil tests.
They're just, think about them sitting around watching this and going, and Chuck with even out the music and the special effects and things like that. He knows what he's hoping for. So, Scott, we can roll that. There it is.
There we go.
So, I mean, look at those.
Thread. Look at the thread.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Each of those, and you're talking about animating not on even one cell or one drawing. I mean, it's
no overlay. Big bold letters.
Look at him. You got to animate a ladder, for goodness sake. You got to animate, a bag. This is so good.
Well,
I mean, look at the movement.
On this, how many layers are this? There's a lot of layers in the animation on this, and we're gonna, hear about that a little bit more a little bit later also. But how many layers? It's not just this is not one piece of paper. This is multiple layers of animation, multiple characters, multiple things going on that are being overlaid, except for that one frame that said no overlay.
Yeah. Well, and like that tree, I hadn't noticed that one before, but where he pulls out the things, they have to know where the background's going to be, so it looks like it's coming out of the background. And so, I mean, it's not like you get to, let's just animate him and then we'll just sort of figure out the tree on top.
Well, and you know what I think is so awesome about, we get into the, 3 sizes too small, and into the animation, when you see the pencil test, and this is what to me is so remarkable, is the fact that, by the time you get to clean up animation and you're, refining things and they're inking and painting and stuff, you sometimes, to me, you lose a little bit of the character of the lines that were drawn.
Right.
You don't lose any of the character on this, like what he did in his and what they did in the animation, the pencil test, and then you switch to the actual film.
Yep.
It fits.
Well,
so seamlessly.
and one of the reasons that's the case is because they use the Xerox process, and so. This was after the dot and the line where they started really using the Xerox process, which was important for them because of the texture that needed to be transferred. You couldn't ink those things. It would be impossible to ink those things. And so they had to use the Xerox process in that. So in this now, all of the sketchiness of the drawings translates perfectly. And that was what Chuck wanted. So can we take a look? I'm gonna, this will.
Come on now.
Here's the thing. 6 years ago, in preparation for the 50th anniversary, now we're at 55 years. I mean, which is pretty cool. We went in and found a production drawing of the scenes that we have, and put it together it took days, and I did it personally, to go in, identify the scene number, identify the animator, identify the verbiage that went with it, and put together basically like a storyboard of the animation drawings, and it was put into a portfolio. So it's almost like a flip book, which is great. You're talking about the layers?
Yes, layers.
And I won't take a bunch out here, but I mean, look at that. You got to animate the Who's. You got to animate the snow. You got to animate. There's a little kid who comes by on a little sled. I mean, talk about, this is the opening sequence, and you've got to animate like 4 or 5 different areas so that they all fit together. I'm going to lay that down and do that later so I don't mess it up. Now, this may be better to go ahead and show the images as we go through, because I'm sort of doing this and I'm not sure that I can get them all in there, maybe. But if you want to put them over, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, then, I mean, you can, as we go through, and I'm just going to flip through this pretty quickly, that, you know, you can kind of see throughout the scenes, and this is, you know, thousands and thousands of moments that need to be animated in each scene. And I just love the detail. I mean, around the eyes, and this is not just an inked thing. This is, each one is a texture. And you know, each of these, you know, you've got Max being hung up there. That's sideways, but that's okay. You know, you've got the Grinch, his teeth are held in there. So it's animating around the teeth. And then I love the Who's. I mean, I'm a big fan of, you know, some of those beginning things with the toys and they'll bang their truntukers, they'll slang their slunkers. I didn't memorize that. I'm reading it.
Wait, the slunkers, because I want to pause on one image. Well, there's going to be 3, but Scott.
Okay.
Scott, take 247, please. I love Chuck's doodles, right? They're like his random doodles on stuff. And this, to me, between the design of the little Who character and then what he's holding in this little bell, man, does that not scream Chuck Jones to me?
It does.
That. I love.
You're
that.
right. His doodles are awesome. And then some classic scenes like these, the Cindy Lou Who. The next one is that I believe is a Phil Roman scene. He did a lot of the Cindys. Came in as one of the young guys. More Who, sort of a classic thing.
Oh, and so yeah, Scott, can you take 249 to? Yeah, I know we're gonna get to that because that's the next
okay.
one. That's number 3 of 3. This is number 2 of 3. I love the designs on the characters. Look, for one, you got the Maurice Noble backgrounds, and then you've got how Chuck and Dr. Seuss were in there, and the designs of the characters. I love how the Who's are designed, and I just think it's so unique, and all the little personality, you know, details that they put in just on characters, and then for how many they had to create is nuts.
Yeah.
Scott, you got to go back to Craig for this one. We can show it, but yeah. Wait, I want to see in that right there. Can you just hold that up? You could see that without knowing anything else and know exactly who that is.
I know. It's just animating the eyes. I mean, think about each 24th of a second as he blinks and he does this thing. It is just, I came across that and went, okay, that's a scene in itself. And
but
I
look
just
at little details, even in the furry wrinkles on stuff, and like how much is in just that one small drawing of his eyes and all the stuff that goes with it. Man, I love that.
And then you got classic, obviously, Grinch walks where he's going to go get Max, drags him off. I mean, I always felt bad for Max at this point, and you know, he's just a good dog. I mean, every dog is good, and you just, you know. And this being a single scene with 2 things, it may be easier to see side by side from the scan, Scott. I think I put them together. No, I didn't. Now flip back and forth real fast. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so you know there, yeah. So you can kind of see that he's actually overlay. So there's actually 2 separate sequences of drawings that are being animated here. So I just love the expressions of each moment, and poor Max, you know, with the lighting that's a little different. Going down that was a big thing. It was that whole journey down. It was really a relationship builder between Max and Grinch on the way down the mountain. And when he comes back on the back, you know, of the I don't have, that's what I don't have. Yeah, I was waiting for him to wave, and I don't have that. So obviously I don't have that. But look
at that expression of him on the ladder. I mean, come on. And that one,
This,
right there, yes.
I know. And
And
the
growing a pup.
production notes on it. I mean, this is Ken Harris. I mean, this is all Ken Harris. And that was the thing that Chuck, I sat with him when we were releasing One of Ones for the first time. And as you know, originally all the cells were collected only, and no one cared about the drawings. And then, you know, to have a drawing, and Linda, my mom, came up with a concept. Hey, let's make a limited edition of one from that drawing. And then all of a sudden, you know, everybody's like, oh, that's a brilliant idea that we get a one-of-a-kind limited edition and the original production drawing. That is so cool to see all of this and to sit with Chuck while he signed a bunch of these things. And he's like, whoa, that's Benny, or that's Ken, or that's Lloyd. And so he knew what scene, that he could tell from the drawing which ones they were. And he said, he'd look at me and he goes, what are you doing with these things? And I'm like, well, they're going to go in homes, like, you know, all the other things that we're able to do. And he said, you know, that there will be never a production like The Grinch ever made again. And this was 1993 or 4. And I'm like, yeah, everybody, it is being appreciated in that realm. Oh, I love the Max with the in the window. I mean, look at that expression. Only Chuck can get that. That's such a Chuck Jones look, you know, that glare. And then poor little Max with the bag's gonna just squish him.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
So, like, as we're on the Max, so what I wanted to do was, I love production drawings. You know, that's a thing of mine, and you know that because you them to me, and then I end up purchasing something. Like, hey, I don't know. I just found this thing. I didn't know if you'd like it. I'm like, whatever, dude. Just put it on the account. And so when we get into, you know, like these with the production drawings, there's also things like in the production materials, you know, like what I loved about it, that you have, I mean, I could look at these all day long.
I know. I'm just flipping through, but I know there's another thing that you want to see. Let me just get through this. Let me get through this garbage. Let me just,
and the
I
only
know. Look at
that. Go faster is because we did agree to a timeline, and
I know.
We're terrible, and we're two cats trying to herd cats.
I know. No, that's a good point. They animated the heart growing. I love that.
Right?
Cindy down to the thing where she gives. Anyway, so that was the storyboard production drawing. So, but here, this is, I think, what we're talking about.
Please.
This is a random set of stuff in a box that, and it wasn't in this actual box before, but it got moved into this box for travel. This is why I took the box.
Oh,
because literally there's a cell, original production cell of the eyes, like we talked about animating, over an original production drawing of the Grinch head. So they animated the eyes over that. And I just went, okay, right there, I want that, because I love that it's a production material. So
now, you have more of these?
Well, so there are a few eyes and things like that have sort of gotten set aside because they were never really, you couldn't do anything with them, and they got forgotten years ago. And so as I came, you know, sort of journeying through, I found some things that sort of belong together. There's that sewing scene that we talked about, you know, side by side, that would the overlay type of thing. And, you know, this is just random production drawings in this box. Here, this is the Who's being animated with that darn tree. And I told you there was a kid coming by. So, you know, it's sort of that he would go here, but you can never see it. So one of the things that somebody asked when we were going through was if you found a kid like that in cell and put it over that, would that be interesting? And I said, well, I'd be interested in it because I think that is a cool little setup. And I found one that, let me see, because I love that.
That's one of my all-time favorites. Is
the scenes.
Oh yes.
I truly must hear. You know, I mean, this is when he's coming down the mountain, and you know, I love both of these in that, you know, as you animate him coming on, and then he gets down there, and you know, the color call outs and things like that. That's one of the things I really love. This was the one I told you about. So I was just mentioning. So here's an original production drawing of the Grinch, who's for a moment was, and this is an original production cell. So, I mean, for me, I love this sort of like, this is the process all in one setup. I just think that is the coolest thing. So,
And I'm a huge production drawing fan. So to match
oh,
that in an actual production cell where you get to see both.
yeah.
Bruce is telling me to calm down. I can't, Bruce.
So these are just things that were sort of Oh, yeah, I remember.
Oh, this is it. Okay, come on.
Okay. Talk about collaboration. I mean, this is, so in a book, so I've got 4 pages reproduced here to give you an idea about what it is, but you can see this is Ted's note. That's Chuck's note. The original book has their notes. They went back and forth and made notes for each other within the book. And to see that there is an actual book that had notes down in Whoville.
Book, right?
We do have the book. Yeah.
My gosh. And here, I mean, this is Chuck. It's not just Ted altering it. Chuck's got his notes in there as well. So I just love seeing that there is a place, and not just on an email, that that is where they worked together, so that it came out and you knew what it was going to be within the book, within Ted's mind, that it was okay, and Chuck, it was sort of that back and forth. And this is one of those Maurice Noble layouts. I mean, that's an original. I love Maurice. Oh my!
I know.
God.
Oh, his design capabilities.
The dude's just taking a marker to him and be like, it should look like this.
And this is the color, and this is all of that. I just think these things are so cool. And there's a production cell that happened to be in there. I love him. So I think that was.
So, as
I know we're running out of time. So
what I wanted to say, like that book with the 2 of their notes on Dr. Seuss's book, and they're both going back and forth and making little notes as they're starting to feel this thing out. Like, that's the birthplace of this film, and we're like, I can see this. And obviously you have Dr. Seuss's buy-in now, because he's marking up his own book and trying to figure out how to make this thing happen with Chuck. And man, relationships like that, are, I'm not going to say they're few and far between, but I'm just going to say they're ultimately magical, because I don't think they're that common. I think they're a little bit more rare. And look what happened to that, something that's still to this day, forget the Jim Carrey one, freaks my kids out, right? The new one that came out, that was done for money. So this, when you put all that together, and for something to stand the test of time as it does now, to where it's my kid's favorite, my 3-year-old likes the original Chuck and Dr. Seuss version over anything brand new. That proves the point. So
I know. So we're going to move quickly, because I'm going to skip everything all the way up to sort of the 70s. But I just, because it's sitting here and I don't know if we'll have it another time. These are books that I got when Chuck and Ted were very close, and this is my foot book that Ted gave me.
If he wrote in this to you, I'm gonna shut up.
For Craig, who has fine feet, with best wishes from Dr. Seuss, whose feet hurt. 1968.
Come on now.
I know, and this is my foot book, or the book about me. So literally, this is probably when I was 8. And so anyway, just a little, there's my foot. Look at that. There's my hand. Look at that. So I'm 4'11" and a half. So.
Oh, well, you grew a little bit.
I guess. But so now that we're sort of a little behind, but I wanted to race through talking about, that, the 1960s, there was more at MGM. There was more that Chuck did, obviously, and then crested out and went on into the, did my camera die? Oh, yes, no. I think we got it. So, well, you're going to have to, let me do this while Ben, you talk about the whole, mentoring, because I know that's something that is true to your heart.
Yes. So you go from this to, a smash success. He moves on to the 70s, back, doing his production work and working on new things. And what I loved about Chuck, and as you and I can attest to, because we've met these people in the studios, Chuck was big on mentoring, right? He didn't keep it all to himself. He poured it out into others, like John Lasseter, Glenn Keane, John Musker, Ron Clements, those guys. And, even, to this day, Byron Howard, the Academy Award winning director at Disney. And the fact that he would keep pouring this stuff out to people, that was a passion of his, which is what led him, to donate. Like, how did all this stuff end up?
So I mean, he really wanted to raise the level of animation, and so this mentoring, this teaching, this sharing of the history, and so Grinch being an absolute, in his mind, I think almost a perfect film, and he keeps talking about that as the crescendo of this production life with this team, and so he wanted people to learn from it, and so he lent the entire production to UCLA in the early 70s. And I'm a Bruin, and it was well received. They loved it, and unfortunately, not too many years after there was a flood in where they kept it, and a lot of the production material got soaked and destroyed, and it just so they felt obviously horrible. Chuck found out about it. And maybe it's why I got into UCLA. They felt badly and just said, okay, let the boy in.
Let him in.
Let him in. But I literally, I was in high school and I was 16 years old, and a friend of mine that I swam with, we went up with a big truck that we rented and picked up all of the MGM stuff from LA. So literally, the guys there helped load it onto the truck, but we lifted this, brought it back, unloaded it into warehouses down in Orange County, where my mother was obviously starting this business. And I personally built all the shelves in the second warehouse where they were stacked. So me at 16, fundamental in the foundation of this entire industry.
Yes.
Was that pretty much a stretch? I think it was a big stretch.
You went from just a little 4'11" dude, and 8 years later you were
so I think the thing, is that there was a lot, unfortunately, but then all of a sudden the appreciation of, this as an art form in the 70s became pretty big, and into the 80s. And so, it was obviously, it's what my mother founded the company on, is to find, beautiful works of art that need homes, like an adoption agency. And so, these are treasures, and, there are some very passionate people out there about how the Grinch Stole Christmas. And so, I thought that it would, oh, look, I'm full length vision now. Hey, look at that.
You got just legs. There you go. And I think that's what's important, is the collectability of this, and why it was so, like, once this started going out, right, and people they wanted some, because for one, it made us feel good. Like, I like collecting art that makes me feel something, and I surround myself with stuff that has attachments to me, and so many people had attachments and still do to this film. Somebody recognized your socks. And so, there you go. Come on now. There's So go ahead, and that's why I'm excited that we were able to bring the Stitts and Mr. Heeter in, because this to me embodies this, passion and desire for this collecting, and you take it from there.
Mike Stitts is a friend for the last 20 some years, and Bill Heeter also. And I just thought, if we're going to talk about the Grinch, I've had so many conversations, and I just sat with him, and we put together a little snippets of that conversation, because it would go on days. But why don't we just talk, and you can hear Mike Stitts and me having a conversation.
The first time I saw it, I think I was 6, and it literally is, and my mother will testify, it's all I talked about, like, for about, till the next, back then you had to wait a whole year to see it. And I will tell you right now that I have Dr. Phil on speed dial, because when I was 9 years old, and back then, remember, you checked the TV guide, right? And then in the paper, and I missed it when I was not, and literally, so I had to wait 2 years to see it. And to this day, I still, I get a little emotional about it, and I'm still not quite over it. It does, it hits you right here. So
that big hole of the ninth birthday, and the 9-year-old vast void. So what was it about that first one at 6, do you think, that
I tell you one of the big things that struck me was the whole, because I loved the heart change part at the end. because my parents used to call me Negative Nick. For some reason, they were the sweetest people that have ever walked the earth. But for some reason, I was always a little grumpy. And so after I saw The Grinch for the first time, I'm like, oh, so maybe like, my heart can grow a little bit and I can be a lot sweeter, And so the end of it just affected me so much. It was like literally, it was the highlight of the year. That 30 minutes, which was all, you had to wait a year for 30 minutes. I couldn't wait till it came on. And the fact that I did miss it one year was still like, I'm not over it, So, but I know that if I learn to love again and learn I can get through it.
So were there things as you watched, and then, as you became an adult, if you ever become an adult, that, you sort of saw things in there that, you had revelations about, or like I've seen it 20 times and I don't remember that part of it.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I think the part too that always about the Christmas, Dr. Seuss's, his poems and his writing about that doesn't come from a store. And I remember that hit me really hard as a kid too. I'm like, okay, so it's not about like all the presents. It's about like people and hanging out and, Jesus' birthday, it's Christmas. Okay. So it's not about just getting oh, okay. And the Grinch becomes sweet in the end, so it was just like, it was the trifecta of, even as a kid, like a great perspective on things, and Dr. Seuss had a way of putting a lot of that into a lot of his stuff too, with Horton and then every, with people are people, no matter how small, and just all kinds of stuff, so, but it was, and it was like a family event. We would get together and watch it. And you did not, after 9 years old, you did not miss the planning on that one.
Now, when you found out that they were available and that you might be able to own something sometime, when was it that you added your first, Grinch work of art?
Well, see, I didn't realize that the Grinch stuff was available probably till the mid 90s, so it's probably 25 years ago, maybe a little bit. So I was kind of a late bloomer, but then when I found that out, and of course I met all you guys, in the late 90s, I think it was at the gallery in Laguna. And that's when my head pretty much exploded. So, and at the time, because it was not a want, it was a need. I needed all of it, and like I think a lot of people because I just love the art. I mean, I can sit and enjoy it, and I can stare at it for hours, and everybody else has moved on. I'm still like because I just appreciate it, But yeah, it was probably late 90s, and then of course I found about all the limited edition stuff that had become so popular, starting I guess in the early 80s, maybe mid 80s with the Warner Brothers stuff. And then, so my first actual Grinch production piece was probably around 2000-ish,
Okay.
Somewhere around there, like 98, 99, 2000,
Yeah.
And it was just like, I can't, because even to this day, to see, to get to see it, there's that shot that, as a kid, that, I couldn't wait to see every year, there it is, it's to me, it's incredible.
I would remember you coming into a Grinch show and getting there when it starts, and taking your time and going around and really experiencing every work of art. And Andy would sort of, leave and then come back and leave and come back. But you would study and you'd sort of have this experience as you go through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell me a little bit about that and how you come to a decision. You're fending off people putting their red dots out in front of you.
I know.
Kind of like Wonder Woman thing, just like, get away from me. But no red dots here. I'm still studying.
That's right. Yeah. Andy has helped a lot with that, because you're right. At first, you just I need all of it. I want all of it, and that's just, I don't want to own the whole world's collection, because that wouldn't be fair to everybody else, But so I think then as time goes by, I've become a whole lot more selective and a lot pickier. But I still, even if it's something maybe I already have that scene or something, I still I'm like, well, maybe I need, do I need two of those? I guess not. I don't need two of those, But because there's just, and you guys, of course, have unbelievable stuff. I mean, the pieces that you have. I mean, if you're interested in looking into getting Grinch stuff, there's still some fantastic stuff available. Some people have thought, it's been collected for a long time, but there's still lots of amazing, and so, you know, I still need all of it, but I've tried to get to what's just strictly a want, you know. So I've switched from need to want. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, but I've tried to get, you know, but I think you have to be, you have certain scenes or certain sequences or whatever that you like, you know, over others. And, but yeah, my problem is I enjoyed the entire thing. I mean, Andy would always go, I mean, you like all the scenes where there's just the Who's? It's like, oh yeah, I love all the Who stuff. I mean, you know, so I've always enjoyed all of it. Because, you know, you had cell washers, right? That just literally just washed it all away. And you know, the story about Warner Brothers that, you know, burned, you know, millions of cells. Why didn't they see the value in that as an art form? Like, was it a movement that came along? Like, when did it happen that people went, oh, that's really, we should hold on to that. That's really cool. You know,
Yeah.
That's a piece of America. Plus, it's an American iconic piece of history too, because it really is a, you know, for the most part, an American art form that kind of developed here. It sort of grew. And I just can't believe that nobody, especially in the 30s and 40s and 50s, even the 60s, didn't see the incredible value of it, you know, as just a piece of art.
Yeah, and I know that there were. I mean, obviously Disney had the Cohosted Gallery take some of the original production cells and create works of art where they would apply them over Cohosted type backgrounds, and then those things are still found out there, which was wonderful to preserve. Disney certainly protected way more of theirs, and they have way more of their archives than Warner Brothers ever did, and I think part of that was probably because that the theatricals were thought of as important, whereas the short subjects at Warner Brothers, you know, that it was just, okay, just churn them out. You got to do 10 a year each unit. You know, we can do 30 a year. They're byproducts of this. We don't really need them. And then when they shut down the studio and weren't doing it anymore, they were a film company. They weren't a you know, an animation company. Warner Brothers, that is. I mean, everybody, you know, 9 out of 10 people remember Warner Brothers as Looney Tunes, you know, and not much else. But
right,
you know, they sort of were like, oh, it was sort of a lot of the history back when, and fortunately, people are appreciating it. I think it was really in the 70s and then in the 80s that the people started to realize that the longevity of the Warner Brothers characters and the people who created them, like you said, this team of people, Chuck Jones, and how special his work was at Warner Brothers. And now he went on to do the Tom and Jerry's and to do How the Grinch Stole Christmas and Horton Hears a Who and other things there at MGM, that people took note and were like, wait a minute, there's a thread here over 7 decades, you know, of animation.
Yeah.
These last 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, wait a minute, this is going away. And animation really kind of went away in the late 60s and into the 70s for a while. So people were like, I want a piece of this history. And and so, yeah, so do you have a favorite piece? I'm going to transition quickly there. See how that's just boom, boom.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite 1 or 2 works of art that you sort of go, wow, you know, I am so glad I said yes to that piece when it grabbed me by the throat and dragged me down.
I've got a few. I've got probably 3 or 4 that are probably my favorites. This Maurice Noble definitely is. I just, that's incredible.
It's one of those moments that is just so perfect.
An expression, like, that's when he's like, okay, I get it. Like, I realize that it doesn't come from the store. You know?
And you know, there's something so delicious about knowing that it's about to let go of Max's foot, and you know what is coming.
Especially when I was a kid, I always loved that. You know. That's one part of my favorite scenes. This is absolutely one of my favorites, and this is the. So this is the famous scene where all the Who's come up, you know, and the camera holding hands. But what I did was, and Scott helped me, is you know, when you put, because it's like 5 layers of cells, and so when it was over the original background, let me start. Maybe I can angle it this way. There we go. That's a little bit better.
Yep. Oh, that's
was
beautiful.
Like you kind of lost a lot of the stuff that was in the background. So you guys, you know, made a copy of the background. I put the cells on that, and then actually the original background.
Oh, so because you don't want to frame out the all the detail up there. Look at that.
Yeah, because you can see a lot of it gets covered, you know, when you put the characters on. But I'm a big I'm a big Whoville fan, so that's probably one of
Yeah.
my favorite
That's
pieces.
Maurice Noble at his best right there.
Yeah,
Look at the way that it all sort of surrounds where the characters are. I mean, if you look at, yeah. So I mean, that it's just perfectly framed, and I think that's what I appreciated about everything that Maurice did. It's all about, oh, now I'm looking at the characters, the who's,
hmm
and as Dr. Seuss as you ever get. And then you get all the
yeah,
color and all the detail. And I love the hair of each of the who's,
yeah, and that's
or
something.
lack of hair, which is, good. I get that. But,
Exactly.
that is a beautiful setup.
This is one that Scott helped me find, and Cindy Lou. This is one of the sequences we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And I just love the and I've got the pencil drawing for that too. But I love the expression on her. I mean, that's one of my favorite expressions she has in the whole cartoon.
Like this big surprise.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I do love it. Yeah, that's one of my favorites probably.
That is beautiful.
They're all my favorites. I like all of it. Even the stuff that's like what I call the in-between shots, where maybe their eyes are closed. I love all of it. Even if it's like a half body. I don't know if anybody else enjoys it as much as I do, but I just love all of it. I really do. Here's the drawing from that Cindy Lou Who.
Ooh.
So, which is really cool.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean,
Look at the detail in that. That is, I believe that is a Phil Roman sequence. And because he did a lot of the Cindy Lou Who, and you just look at the detail in each of those drawing strokes. And
I think Phil could have been. I think he could have been a professional.
I think he should have. Yeah, you're right.
Should have done it for a living.
Nice.
I got to show. It was one more actually that we just got from you guys, because obviously the incredible abundance of ridiculous stuff that you guys still have, which is the Who's at the table. I have always loved that sequence, and this was at the last event, and oh my gosh, I absolutely just love that one.
The way that there's so many layers there, and the way that as you animate, you're talking about putting these characters, animating them with all of this stuff, and the background shines through that guy's face, and how he moves the candle, around it. It's right crazy. Through the middle of his face. Yep, it is. It's brilliantly done. I love those sequences. It just, because I'm such a banquet fan, that scene when they're, I am, but and the family and the get-togethers, and when I grew up and going to whether it be Thanksgiving or Christmas, and there were 15, 17, 20 people at the table. Those are the memories, and this reminds me of that. And obviously growing up with it like we all did, that sort of the festivity of it and the joy of the Who's is all so brilliant. I love that. That is a brilliant work of art. Now, is there anything else that you would add, that you'd want to add a few tidbits about How the Grinch Stole Christmas, or anything else in your collection about the Grinch, or your passion for it? I would
say anyone that's like even thinks that they're interested, to reach out to you guys, because obviously you're an incredible resource and have just amazing stuff. The problem you're going to run into is you're going to want all of it, so just be careful. Decide what you're interested in, because you're going to go, I need that. I need that. I need that. But it's funny, because here we sit almost 60 years later, and the impact that it's had, and it's, like you said, still like worldwide, it's this unbelievable event. I mean, I think probably in the States, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which is like the stop animation thing, and the Grinch are probably like the two most popular, things every year that everybody. It's not officially Christmas until it plays.
It almost seems like it's officially Christmas then, because it's coming back very soon. So
we got one more week till Thanksgiving, and then I can get into the Christmas mood.
There you go. So okay.
So hey, I wanted to show the gift with purchase, because we just got off Mike and this is gargantuan collection. And for anybody who is picking up a piece tonight, or is going to wrangle their consultant to be like, what's in Craig's hidden box that's available, let's see the gift with purchase.
So this was a print that was done about 20 years ago from an original storyboard, larger piece of artwork that Chuck did back in the mid 1960s. And you can go to the actual print, Scott, and there you go. So it's a print. It is a something that is a nice addition to a collection, so you can see some of the pre-production work. But it is a fine art print, and I will say, just looking at it in person, I'm like, is that the real thing? Because I thought maybe they stole it.
So I get something today. I get something, and I get that.
Yeah, I think there's a few prerequisites for it, but that asterisk thing that always happens. That's for these guys that know much more than I do. So,
asterisk says if you don't get it soon enough, Ben doesn't get one because he waited too long.
There you go. So,
all right, well,
so Ben, what are you doing at 9 o'clock my time? Because I got some things to show you.
Zoom call will continue.
Yeah. Oh, okay, fine. Yeah.
So hey, I wanted to get into before, like, as we segue into Bill, Mr. Heeter.
Quickly.
I call him Sir Heeter, and he's like, "Sir," I'm like, "Just go with it."
Yeah.
So Chuck's, all the accolades are coming down, right? He's got the Lifetime Achievement Award, the 30th anniversary. This is becoming a thing with this collection of art and people's appreciation for it, and it's starting to, like, the traction's already there, and it's really, launching out big time. And what I love, and what segues into Sir Heeter's clip, is the fact that this wasn't, for a lot of people, and we just had the interview with Mike, it's not just something they keep for themselves. And I've seen, when we were out in California 2 years ago or something, maybe a little bit longer, and we went to where he had loaned it to that museum for the exhibit, and it was stunning stuff, absolutely stunning. And I'm like, and I thought this was yours, and he's like, no, this is Bill's. And I'm like, sweet mercy. And so to see all of that there, he has a museum exhibit, and the fact that he is that generous with what he's putting out so that everybody can see these things is amazing. And I'm going to tee it up for you and Bill Heeter.
Go. Bill says it all, so go ahead. Well, I think the easiest way to start is probably to just thank you, Bill, for having a chat, because now that we're 55 years into this thing, I think of you because of your passion for the film, as well as all the things that you're doing now with your collection and sharing it with the world, which we'll get to a little later on. But I always like starting at the beginning. So in the beginning, there was Bill Heeter. So that
okay, you might want to rephrase that.
How did you, maybe you can, this year I wanted to focus more on yes, the making of it, but more of sort of the appreciation of it as a film, as a work of art, as the artwork that was involved in its creation and things like that, and the collecting of it, because it's such a passionate thing for so many. And when I think of that, I obviously think of you and your collection that you've built over the years. And so how did you first get involved in deciding, hey, I think I want to start collecting this little thing called How the Grinch Stole Christmas?
Well, I think, I have to give credit to Robert Patrick, because he's the one who really encouraged me. I collected a lot of Chuck's limiteds in, I'm going to say, early to mid 90s. And you guys were kind enough to invite me out for one of your special client events. And there on the wall, there were a few Grinch images. And I think he saw me just kind of focus on them. And I can't remember if I mentioned it or he mentioned it, but one of us said, well, I only do limited editions. And Robert said, you need to rethink your strategy here. You really need to think about some of these other things, because I don't think a Grinch Limited had been released back then. So the more I looked at it, and I think probably the more wine Robert gave me, I ended up getting one, or I think I picked up 2 of them, and that was the start of it. But, I have to say, and it sounds corny, but it's really true. Every time I get one of these cells, it's a little bit like Christmas for me, no matter what time of year, because you open up the package and here's an image that reminds you of one of the favorite things. So I still get excited about it after all these years. I love tracking down new images. In terms of what specifically, love the expressions that Chuck does. That's what strikes me in particular. They're just the little nuances, whether it's the wiggling of the mouth or whatever it may be. It's so opposite of Tex Avery. And I love Tex Avery, but the nuance of the Grinch, I think, is terrific.
So, do you happen to remember what those first two cells that the scenes were? What were the first two?
One was of the Grinch it was a close-up of the Grinch on the sleigh with his whip, and the other was the whip, a second cell with just Max looking backward with the whip snapping over his head. So it was really kind of a diptych, and I think that's the way I framed him. But love him, you know, and we actually named our first dog Max. So, in honor of the character in the Grinch. So, yeah.
Was that before or after you started collecting your first, your first dog was before or after you started collecting?
Ew, I think before, but I've loved, I saw the Grinch when it first came out in 1966. So it was ingrained in me way before that this is what we wanted to do. And Christy endorsed it. So that's what we did.
So that first time that you saw it in 1966, kind of give me how did you hear about it? Was it just an event? Tell me about that the first time.
Well, let's see, 1966. So I would have been 6 months old. Wait a minute. No, my math is off. I was about 11 years old in 1966. And I was a fan of the Warner Brothers cartoons, and I had read the Grinch book, as part of my going through all the Dr. Seuss's in those days. And when I found out there was this television show, I just parked in front of the TV and watched it. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol might have premiered the year before.
I think that sounds right. Okay.
Something like that. And I watched that as well. And I enjoyed them both, but the Grinch stuck with me forever, really. And so it became an annual event. And to this day, the only thing that Christy says is a bit annoying is, as we watch the Grinch as a collector, now I go, oh, we have that image. Oh, I want that one. Where can I get, so it's kind of just picking it apart and looking at the wrong stuff. But we still, as I said, we still like trying to find things that will complete our collection. So what you're saying is that it's a video catalog, is the way you see it. Yeah. I hate to say it, but yeah. We're a bit short. We're a bit short in our inventory, but we're working on that. We're working on that catalog.
How did you find out about, and how did you decide that you wanted to start collecting this art form? And, in just the limited editions in general, and all the things that you collect.
I think the best way I can describe it is, I was fortunate enough to meet Chuck a couple times. And what do you say to someone like Chuck Jones, who's not only kind of your idol, but he's your intellectual superior? So kind of, instead of stuttering or stammering, I thought, what can I say to this guy that can possibly make an impact? And when I got a chance to meet him, I said, Chuck, I have to tell you that I have one of your limiteds in the hallway, and it's the last thing that I see when I go to bed at night, and it's the first thing I see in the morning. And both times it makes me chuckle. And although it's been hundreds and hundreds of times that I've seen that, I still chuckle. And that's the beauty of the limited editions, because they're pulling out the best scenes of the best cartoons, and they were so well done that I loved them. And the other aspect of it is it's really hard to find production art. To find the key scenes with the key characters and looking, right position and everything. I mean, that's a needle in a haystack. And the limited editions kind of did that for you. And I liked them. But then when I attended one of the special client events and saw those production cells of the Grinch, that started me down a different path. And I'm really glad that happened, because I like doing it. I like trying to find not only the cells, I love the backgrounds. The colors that were used in those backgrounds, the fuchsias and purples and all this kind of stuff, were so unusual, I think, for the day and age, and yet so apropos. So I love those Maurice Noble backgrounds. They're terrific, I think. I love collecting, and I kind of think I know how a cartoon comes together. But when I get around you and other people and animators and directors, I realize I know about 1%. But part of getting that 1 or 2%, whatever I have, is understanding where the drawings fit in, where the the roughs fit in, and storyboards and how this whole thing comes together, because I really didn't know that. So as I started collecting, other people said, well, you really should look at this. And I kind of at first didn't pursue it. And then the more I looked at it, the more I thought it was interesting. I was concerned at first when the cells came out, production cells came out with the reprinted background, because it confused me a bit. But most everybody I've spoken to felt that it really sets the scene, because I may not remember exactly where it fit in the cartoon. And then obviously it adds a burst of color in there too. So I would guess about half to 2/3 of the collection now has the copy backgrounds. And then maybe, I don't know, I haven't never checked it, but 10%, 15% have the actual production backgrounds.
Okay.
Which are hard to find. And then I do have some drawings, and you guys did the giclée, I think, of some of the images that were in the book, and that's a nice collection. So part of it's just me learning more about the process and trying to pass that on to people.
You told us about the first cells that you did, which are, cells over white backgrounds. And then when you started kind of maybe the first thing like, oh, there's an original either layout or an original background or something like that you went, oh, yeah, I gotta have that one.
I think it was matching the actual production drawing with the cell. That was cool. Because, at first when the art was distributed, there were a lot of people out there handling it, and the drawing may go in one direction to one gallery, or it may come out later. And so they weren't necessarily matched. So a little bit was the thrill of the hunt of trying to find the matching pieces. And the other part of it was to frame them as diptychs or triptychs to, again, show the process. And, part of it, and I can understand why drawings are your favorite, because that Chuck probably touched it somehow. And that's pretty cool. And whereas with the cells and that kind of stuff, not as much maybe, but I like the fact that you can bring it together and, again, show people how this thing works. Because, again, I think most people who look at this are probably in my amateur status and don't know the details of how this whole thing comes together. So Christine, I like to try to show that to people just to kind of help educate them on the process.
So is there, I mean, might as well let's talk about your sharing with it. So why don't you talk about how you decided that you wanted to share this incredible collection that you've built over decades, and now you've kindly allowed other people to peruse upon it in these exhibitions that you're putting together. So tell me about that whole process to begin with.
Well, it mostly came out of my whining. One day I was whining to Christy that, we've spent a lot of time, just what you said, kind of bringing this collection together, which tells the story of my all-time favorite cartoon. And here it's in a box or under the bed or in a storage shelf. There's, you can't present in your home 150 or whatever number of cells. And she said, well, why don't you quit your whining and do something about it? Contact a gallery and see if they have any interest. And I was thinking to myself, well, a lot of galleries don't have appreciation for what animation art is. So I was reasonably skeptical. And the first time I pitched it, they kind of sat up in their chairs and said, what, you have that size collection from that cartoon? And I said, yeah. And the reason we pitched it was simply to share it. You were at the first event we had here in Colorado Springs, I think in 2017. And I don't know if you felt the same way, but I thought it was really cool to just kind of eavesdrop, because you would hear multi-generations. You could have a grandmother with her daughter, with her son, all talking about, yeah, I remember this scene from this cartoon, or isn't Max funny in this little segment? And to hear other people appreciate the same thing that you appreciate is a hoot. And so Christy and I kind of roamed around. You got corralled because everybody wanted to ask you questions and learn more about it. But we were able to walk around and just listen over people's shoulders. I don't want people to get the impression that we eavesdrop everywhere we go. But in this particular case, it was fun. And so one led to the second and led to the third. And
so when you're referring to galleries, you're talking about the museum galleries at these different,
museums.
Yeah. And so the Colorado Springs was the first one, and the the visuals that they put together, obviously with your collection, was stunning. The walls were beautiful. There were different galleries within the museum that you
Right.
could just, find and get lost, really. So you've been at Colorado Springs, and you said 18 and 19 were where?
Well, I'm from Wisconsin, and there's a Trout Museum of Art in Wisconsin. And so they did it, and we did the Hilbert Museum in Orange. So those are the three.
Yeah.
There may be another one in, I don't think so, but then we've got the Museum of the Moving Image in New York City is doing the exhibit this year. And you're coming out to speak to that. And I think, by the way, that's another thing that is a lot of fun, because I've seen you do this presentation several times and always learn something new. And that's a lot of fun, because I'm interested in this. And I was fortunate to have my brother come out and his kids when we were in Wisconsin. And my brother's not, particularly well-versed in this and doesn't collect it or anything, but he walked out of that going, wow, this was really interesting. I really enjoyed that. And again, I'm a big fan of the background stories too, and you cover a lot of that, and I like hearing that as well.
When does the exhibition open this year?
The exhibition opens at MoMI on Friday, November 19th, and runs through February 27th.
Oh, good.
Year.
That's longer than I thought.
Yeah.
And remind me, I know that I'm coming there, but I can't remember when I'm going to be there. Do you remember what day that is?
Boy, it is the following. No, it's like.
Is it the
Saturday,
19th?
December 20th? I want to say 19th or 20th, whatever that Saturday is.
Saturday is. I think
Christmas.
It's the 19th. I think it's the 19th. And
19th,
so,
okay.
Yeah, I could be wrong. It doesn't really matter.
No, don't be wrong. No, you need to be there.
It is the 18th, because I believe the next day. That's right. It is the 18th. But anyway, so I am looking forward to being there at MoMI, and where the Smithsonian tour actually started for Chuck in 2014, the animated art of Chuck Jones. That started at MoMI in 2014, which then toured around the world.
Yeah.
And to be able to go back there and share, exactly, I don't know what, but by then I will find something new, because every time that I know you're going to be there, so I have to find a tidbit that maybe I haven't shared with you yet. We're back to an empty gallery. We're not empty. Hey, Ben, don't you wish you were here with this delectable stuff? I know you've been perusing all night, kind of zooming in on Zoom and whatnot. So I'm just curious, I got two guys over here who have a ton of information about all this stuff, by the way. Mike and Joel are hanging out because they're giving the ambient stuff. Sometimes they're giving shots of their nice shoes. It's a great thing. But
are they for sale?
Yeah. You can dot the shoes. That's no problem. So, just curious, what are your couple favorites that you could sort of see over here?
So you've highlighted some already, which is the scenes with Max, specifically when they're right about to go over the hill. They're getting ready to go down, and I love.
Here, look at this one.
Yes.
Can you get that without too much?
Come on.
Is that crazy?
It is crazy.
I know.
Those are some of
that down for a second.
scenes, and then in addition to that, I'm a huge fan, as you know, of Chuck's watercolors, his inks, and stuff like that. So wonderful, awful.
Look at that.
But you have that, I think, don't you?
Yeah. No, and this is even a cooler one that you may not know about. This one, part of the limited edition. Now we're gonna get you can focus on any shot you want, because we've got multiple shots going on as a user there. This is part of the limited edition, and my eyes can't see. That's AP something, AP7 maybe.
Yeah, I can't.
It doesn't really matter, but so Chuck took this one personally and did an entire embellishment on it. So that is it got put into a box. Actually next to the watercolors, and we found out that, hey, it's numbered, and that it's an artist's proof that he actually redid completely as a mixed media. So that's kind of that's good eye. good eye, mate. That's just brilliant.
I'm
So,
just
yeah.
saying, like, I could peek a few, and I know what my favorite scenes are, and you know how I feel about Chuck's, like, watercolors, his oils, and all his paintings. So, like, that's ridiculously incredible. So I have my little Cindy Lou Who, right, and my tiny,
This guy?
right, and children do great when you're featuring artwork, because most of my purchases have, not most of them, some of them are like, Daddy, I really like that too, and I'm
Wow.
like, I was already thinking about it.
Wow.
And that just kind of reinforces it. So
That's a vintage limited edition. Wow.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of things here now, so that you all know, we don't have a license with for the Grinch anymore. And so all the limited that were done are from way back when, that we've been able to find elsewhere, and sort of over the years put a few back into the collection. So any of the limited editions are vintage by now, at least 12 years old and longer than that. So but the production art obviously 55, 56 years old, and that it's all part of the history, not just of the film itself, but of the relationship between all the people that created it, that all of the the people who love it. I mean, that first year, 38 million people tuned in to watch in 1966, which is a ridiculous number. I mean, think about 38 million people doing anything together. And they all sat down on 7 p.m. on that December 18th night, and then and watched this most expensive 30 minutes of television ever done. So at that point, so I think the way. Do you have any more questions? I mean, we got I want to remind, you wanted me to remind, it was actually your doing, the gift with purchase thing, which is obviously pretty dang cool. And then the raffle thing. Did you,
let's do
before we do so where is that image for the giveaway? And I understand that a random number generator has been generated. So I can't read anything. Does the team have that? You do?
Yes. So
you don't have to be present to win, because it was all part of that whole thing. But if they're there, I hope you'll go in and put your chat in there and say hooray, and maybe say hooray anyway. But go ahead, Ben.
It's drum roll, please. It's Mary Beth Delgado.
Oh, sweet.
Come on.
Oh, that's a vintage limited edition from way back when. Oh, the candy cane caper. Woo! So, that is okay. Wow.
Not a bad Thursday night for Mary Beth. No. You've got the gift with purchase. You've got some amazing stuff up there. I'm sure I'm going to be haggling with Scott to convince
get some of those things
to let stuff go. But it's also your birthday on Monday.
Kind of is. So we're going back to the the me book. Yeah, thank you very much. So
this is all I'm going to say. Are you ready?
I'm here.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. From the child who doesn't want to do anything. Happy birthday,
dear Craig.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, buddy.
Thank you very much. It's a great way to spend my birthday week, down here amongst friends and seeing you and knowing that there's a lot of people out there enjoying this, hopefully. And I certainly enjoyed it. So with that
chat right now, you got all kinds of love coming on the chat.
Oh, I like when that happens. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Let's sign off now and say,
thank you all. Enjoy the art, as Chuck would say.